Welcome back to Sister Brunch, the podcast all about Black women thriving in entertainment and media. I'm your host, Fanshen and oh my goodness, we are so fortunate today to have Kamilah Forbes on with us. Kamilah Forbes is an award-winning director and producer for theater and television and currently serves as the executive producer at the world-famous Apollo Theater. Her directing credits include By the Way, Meet Vera Stark, The Blood Quilt, and Sunset Baby. She has also worked as associate director on the Tony Award-winning A Raisin in the Sun and Emmy Award-winning The Wiz live for NBC. I know you all saw that. It was amazing. Miss Forbes' most recent directorial work, Between the World and Me, aired as a special event on HBO and HBO Max in November 2020, bringing her a host of acclaim and recognition. Throughout her career, Miss Forbes has won numerous awards for both directing and producing, including an NAACP Image Award, a Helen Hayes and Barrymore Award, and an Adelco. Miss Forbes' recent projects include, oh, this is so exciting, directing the sold-out world premiere tour and theatrical adaptation of Ta-Nehisi Coates' New York Times best-selling novel, Between the World and Me. I got a chance to see it, you all, and oh my goodness, yes. She's also set to direct the Broadway premiere. I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth because this is amazing. She's directing the Broadway premiere of Soul Train alongside producer Questlove, playwright Dominique Morisseau, and choreographer Camille A. Brown. Ms. Forbes is widely known for her ability and commitment to continue to highlight the ideas, complexities, and work of artists in the hip hop community and beyond. We are so excited to have you on, Miss Kamilah Forbes.
Oh, thank you, Fanshen. This is awesome. It's great to be on.
Oh, yes.
See, I wore my sister girl pink for the brunch.
You sure did. And you look so good. Oh,
And,
my
and my
goodness.
white shoes. And my white shoes.
Cute. Okay, perfect. Too perfect. Too perfect. Okay, so, oh my goodness, we have so many things to ask you and to learn from you during this time with you. But we always like to start by asking our guests to go back as far as you'd like. It could be when you were born, when your parents were born, your great grandparents, or as far back as you want to go, and tell us about your journey to get to where you are today.
You know, I like to say I am the child of immigrant parents. My parents immigrated to the United States from Jamaica in the late 60s, early 70s. I like to think of myself also as my great
Mm,
grandmother's wildest dream. When I think about, we're talking about not even a generation out of enslavement in Jamaica, and now to see myself and my siblings, where we are in this world is quite phenomenal and remarkable. So, it starts there. It starts in that journey. My parents moved here and moved to Chicago, which is an interesting place for Caribbean people
wow.
to move.
Yes. Not New York, not
Not New
Florida.
York, I
Nope.
know, Chicago. Oh,
The
because
cold.
the
Them did not like
cold.
the cold in Chicago.
Listen. Okay, this was not the
Wow.
move. And and so I think as a lot of times on that journey, you want to absorb yourself in the culture as much as
Mm,
possible. My father was a lover and still is a lover of music. My mother, was a woman that's full of empathy and was also a lover of the theater. So that was always surrounding me growing up.
mm, mm.
And I did theater in high school. I played piano when I was younger. And so, that I go to Howard University and I studied
Yes.
theater. Yes, HU, I had
Yes.
to get to the East
Yes.
Coast and to study theater because I saw the power of culture and how culture affected people on a such cellular level, right? When
Yes.
when when a when a book hits you in the right way, when a performance like hits just that right note, something spiritually, physically happens
Mm,
that no other, I think, form allows you to get to that place. It's spiritual. And I wanted to be a part of that magic. I wanted to be an alchemist in that magic, which is why I
Yes.
started on this journey, right? Um, go to Howard. I studied theater. I come out and I was a broke theater graduate trying to figure out the
You and Chadwick Boseman,
That's
right?
right. I'm a very
Rest
good
in
friend.
peace.
That's
Yes,
right.
yes. Mm, mm.
My brother Chad, and we were at Howard together dreaming of how, these revolutionary thoughts of how, Augusta Boal, of how theater changes the world. And we're going to make that
Yes.
theater that is going to literally change the social, political landscape, et cetera. And we dreamed about that together, while we were eating our ramen noodles. um,
And in a school that really nurtures that. We've
that's
had,
right.
lots of other guests too that went to Howard and HBCUs, and the ways that they nurture
Yeah,
us. First of all, the that we're beyond just one essentialist representation
that's
of
right.
blackness,
That's right.
of the diaspora.
That's right.
And it just I feel like that constantly shines through when we have guests that went to HBCUs. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it was
so
it was a magical thing to study, theater or just any kind of like culture in a place that it reflects you, right? Where my
yes.
foundation were people like, Amiri Baraka. That's my classic. That's a
Whew.
classic I was studying, right? Like that
Yes,
was the beginning
yes.
for me at Howard, and at no other place can you get that kind of love and experience before you head out into the world, a real
Right.
grounding and rooting of self, right?
Mm.
And that was really the magic, I think, of Howard and a lot of my classmates when we were there that continue to be my family now, my closest
Yes,
collaborators now. Um,
yes.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, Kenyatta Matthews, close collaborators of mine. And, that all started at Howard, with us
Mm.
kind of dreaming these very big dreams. And now we're out in the world, trying to make them reality.
Yeah, I'll just plant another seed for our sisters and siblings that are listening around creating those relationships early on, and then maintaining them, the ones that are right for you to maintain
That's right.
and healthy for you
That's
to
right.
maintain. But that artistry, really, when you find those early relationships and can continue to carry those on, look what you have made out of
That's
that.
right.
Look what
That's
happens.
right. That's right. Because here's the thing, I know that there's so many people think about like there's a secret sauce when you get out. I mean, I definitely thought that, right? We graduated. I remember before leaving, Howard, we were at 22. Felicia Rashad taught us the last year. It was our acting instructor, our
Ah.
last semester, right? And it was like, oh my God, Claire Huxtable's here,
Yes.
you know. Um, so of course we're like, tell us a secret. We're going through,
Mhm.
she's teaching us about craft, she's teaching us about commitment, but we're like, we want to know the secret. How do we survive? What are we supposed to do? What is the answer? We know that there's one answer and we need you to unlock it. Like that was like she had like 30 young
Yep.
20-year
Yes.
olds like tell us. And I remember she had us in this room and she was like, okay, I'm gonna tell y'all. And we were like, okay, we ready. Everyone took out their notebook. And she had everyone close their eyes and like literally on some namaste. And we meditated for a good 35 minutes. And I remember opening my
Ooh,
eyes
yes.
like,
Was
did I
anybody
miss
else?
it? What? But I realized, what she was trying to teach us is that the answer isn't something that she can transmit. The answer is right. We have it inside of us. We have it in and around us,
Yeah.
whether that's the relationships
Yes.
that we're cultivating with the people right next to us, right? Like that is the answer, that we have it, and we just gotta slow down, we gotta breathe, we gotta trust, and we gotta listen.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
I didn't
mm.
realize that then.
It takes some time. And we
And we
still need
still need
reminders some
reminders.
days.
We still reminders, right? Like, there's not a magic
Yeah.
pill. There's not a magic person that ultimately opens the door to your
Mm,
future. That there are many
right.
little steps that are built and relationships that are cultivated. That a life is ultimately built, right? Not just a career, but a life.
This is Sister Brunch, the podcast by and about Black women and gender expansive people thriving in entertainment and media. Stay tuned for more of this conversation with our guest, the award-winning Kamilah Forbes. And do us a favor, if you love our show, go ahead and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can follow us on Spotify. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and share your favorite episode with your friends or your family. Let them know all about Sister Brunch. We're back and so excited to continue this conversation with Kamilah Forbes. I know we're still in your young days moving forward, but I have to ask about your transition from being a performer to a producer, and do you miss performing? Is there a possibility that someday we might see you?
You know, it's so interesting, Fanshen, because like you sit in a similar intersection, right? Like as a performer, a producer, right? A writer, right? I was that, and I thought that at that point that performance was the way through. I thought, and part of the reason I didn't really know all the possibilities at that point. I knew I wanted to perform. I knew I wanted to direct. I knew I wanted to like create the magic somehow, and I just needed to figure out how. I loved performing. I really did. But I don't miss it. I don't miss it. Right. Like it's so interesting. Like I've fallen in love with other things. I don't know. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I felt like especially when I did my one woman show, that's when I realized, oh, I'm a storyteller, and that comes in many forms. I don't need to be the one that's on the stage. I got that out of
Yes,
my
that's right.
system, and it was powerful, but it was powerful because I was telling my own story. I was telling my family story. I was telling a story about race and racism in the United States, like, and so those were the important elements, and I realized there are so many ways to do that, not just being on stage or being in front of the camera. So and what I see in your work is how dedicated you are to uplifting others all the time. Like that's what you do. Is here's a good important story to tell, so I'm gonna put this group of people together. Like I would love to talk about the hip hop festival and
Mhm.
how you got started, but that you are about like bringing community together and shining a light on so many
Yeah,
people, so many artists,
yeah,
and not necessarily needing to be front and
yeah,
center,
yeah.
even though you are a fabulous sister. And I'm like, we could all just watch you all day.
Oh, that's so sweet.
uh,
Oh, yeah,
well, how did you start with the hip? Like, let's
yeah,
go
yeah.
there to, yeah, unpack
So
the
the
community feel
community,
too.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
you kind of hit it when you started talking about JAG, right? Like when we were in college, there was a program called, look, we were studying August Wilson, we were studying Hansberry, we were studying all of these great, amazing writers. And as acting students,
yes,
we had to perform them as well. What we began to realize is that, there weren't a lot of stories in the world when we were looking for monologues or plays to ourselves that were of our generation, at that point in time, voices that
yes,
reflected us in
right,
that moment. Um, you know,
right,
and so we had a program called the Playwrights Lab. Now, I didn't consider myself a playwright at that time. Matter of fact, a lot of my peers were in other departments, whether they were directing majors, whether they were musical theater performance majors, whether they were, whatever. But we were all part of this Playwrights Lab, and it was an opportunity for us to experiment and build work, multidisciplinary work,
mm,
devise theater. So we really could experiment. So this was an opportunity to
yes,
say solo work, right? Like this was an opportunity for us to say, okay, let's find our own voice. Um, and we started experimenting with hip hop theater. Chad and I wrote a play called Rhyme Deferred. And it was, we loved hip hop and spoken word. And it was like, oh, let's collaborate. What if we put all of this on the stage? Again, this is 25 years pre Hamilton.
mm,
So, like, this was like
yes,
us
yes,
just dreaming of what could happen. So we created it. We produced it inside of the school. Then we started getting invited outside at festivals. at the National Black Arts Festival in North Carolina. We got invited to the Kennedy Center. We got invited to New York City. And so these were festivals that were producing us. So we got bit by the bug to try to really build, to your point, build community. Because what was interesting at our shows is that our friends would come. I would be casted in plays throughout the city, and I was doing, Two Trains Running, August, and my friends weren't coming to
Mm-hmm,
that.
mm-hmm.
They were like, oh,
Right.
okay, that's cool, but we'll see you
We'll
after.
see
We'll
you
grab
after.
drinks.
We'll grab drinks with you
Exactly.
after.
Yes.
Break a
My young,
leg.
we're
Right.
like 23,
Yep.
24. They didn't see themselves reflected.
Yeah.
But when we started doing our work, we had two DJs on stage. There was breakdancing. There was it was talking about the
Yes.
world now. They were showing up, and a lot of other young people were showing up.
Okay.
And this was an opportunity in which the mainstream theater were not producing writers like this kind of work. They had not paid attention to this kind of work. They were recycling the classics. So what that meant was we also started to find other writers and artists and performers and solo artists like us that were not getting that did not find homes in mainstream theaters. So we had to build community for ourselves. So the producing came out of a necessity to build community for the artists around us that needed a home, but also the audiences that were like, yeah, I want to see that. And so that's really how I cut my teeth on producing, was is really out of necessity.
I love it. I love it. This reminds me of our mutual friend, Michelle Wilson,
I just
my
talked to her the
dear
other day. That's why I
friend.
was like, when
We
this
have
is
to, we
over, we
have
gotta key.
to. We love her so much. And yeah, yes, please. And so we did the same thing at the University of Michigan, which was
Okay.
we were missing our the ability to do contemporary work, to do work that was reflecting. And so she always was running. She's a phenomenal actor, but she also was. We created Black Theater Workshop together there at University of Michigan, and it just reminds. I hope our listeners too, planting those seeds that when there is something that you want to
Mhm,
do, especially reflecting who you are right now, you have that
mhm.
opportunity with community. Like community is the way to make that happen. And that's what you did with this. Oh,
That's so great to hear. Can I just say that that's so great to hear? A lot of people think that, you know, people, and grantedly, yes, some people want to create theater, want to be actors, to be famous, to be glitz, to be this. But majority of us do it to build community. We want to be in conversation with one another. We want to create art that sparks, that makes you go, that makes you feel, that makes you say, I never realized that. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, I'm learning something about myself. Let me be in community with others while I do that. And so it's so cool to hear other people's origin stories. You know what I'm saying? Like how people
yes.
came to storytelling, right?
Yes. Yes.
The why
Yes.
behind it.
Well, you also get to experience, I feel like you get to experience that all the time in your current role as executive producer at the Apollo Theater. Because speaking of something that came out of community that continues in that way, and the way you've, can we say, revived the Apollo
Oh.
and the offerings of the Apollo? Can we say that? Um, can you talk about what a typical day in your life is like? Being the executive producer at the Apollo.
Okay. No, it's actually really kind of beautiful. I it's interesting because I never thought of coming here I never thought of running an institution, and definitely not the Apollo. Like I moved to New York City and would drive down 125th Street just to see the marquee in real life. Like that was it was like
Mhm.
like hallowed ground for me. So when the opportunity came up, I never really saw myself as that kind of a leader. I saw myself as an artist, as a builder of community. But as I the op but I've been at the Apollo now for 7 years, and I came at a point where the Apollo became a nonprofit over about 20 years ago. My predecessor, Mickey Shepard, was known for literally building artistic institutions across the country. She came in at BAM at a pivotal point, built infrastructure. She built an organization in Brooklyn called 651 Arts, built the infrastructure, long lasting. And that's what she came to do at the Apollo, right? Building, not only taking this legacy institution, but building a mission driven nonprofit arts cultural institution, right? So I came at the point after Mickey had done a lot of groundwork around kind of that artistic or that institutional bones to say, well, let's dream. Let's create. What can we build? What do we want to be? Who do we want to be? It felt like being at that Black Box Theater at Howard again, where it was like, oh, what do we do here? Like, how should we paint the walls? How should we render the inside of this space? And how do we want to render our future? That's what got me excited about being here. So when I think about I think about my job and my position truly as I still think about it in the creative realm. I still think about it as a dreamer, as a builder, as a creative. But a typical day is, I meet with my team, which is a programming team. There's meetings with our senior director of education, who manages a 15-person education team, and in hearing about all the curriculum and updates that they're employing throughout schools and community programs across the city. And I meet with our development team who around how I can support their work around fundraising, because we fundraise close to $19 million, or we're a $19 million organization, a majority of which is contributed income as well as earned. And programming team, we dream of programming. What are we going to put in the stage? How does what we shift and change a conversation? And start to plot out what that narrative wants to be.
Mm. Mm,
Yeah.
okay, just a little bit, just a little bit, and then on top of that, how much can you talk about Soul
Yeah,
Train?
yeah, yeah,
Working with
yeah.
Questlove, Dominique Morisseau, working with all of y'all legends working together, who also I feel like are finally starting to get your due, in a broader sense. We all knew each other, and back to the community feel, like we know who our legends are, but to start to have, and I think it really started with Between the World and Me, and that crossover into HBO, but to not, and then with Questlove's documentary, right? So we are finally getting more broad recognition that we've always deserved. What is it like to work with that team?
Well,
Tell us
yeah,
as much as you can.
I
And
know,
when can
right?
we see
So we've been in workshop mode, so kind of closed
it?
workshop mode. We will be having a run at ACT in San Francisco this August. This is sort of our first developmental run. August, September, so early fall in San Francisco, and then hopefully, we don't know when yet, we'll circle back to New York. What is it like working? I've known Dom. Dom was one of the first when we started the festival. I remember when she first moved to New York City, she had this play that she wrote when she was in Michigan, Retrospect for Life. I was like, let's put it in the festival. So we came up as those misfits, those dreamers here in New York, trying to understand how art moves and changes lives, right? Like that, we were in that camp together, and similarly so with our choreographer Camille Brown, right? Like we all kind of moved through in our own spaces and lanes, but also crisscrossing with one another, together. Actually, I have a poster in my office of I've had the fortune of to be able to work with Dom on so many plays and productions as director, in development, in workshop phases, when it's just in the early stages. And I have this poster here, Sunset Baby, right there. So I'll always, so that's my sis, that's family. So like when we're working together, it's like, it's working with family. And I kind of feel that about, like, when we're building, in the trenches, building art is hard enough sometimes as it is, but also it's a love offering, and the process should be just as much of a love offering as the product. And sometimes we forget. I know I've had to take time to learn that and realize. So when I think about the projects I really want to do, it's all about, wait, who am I working with though? Who do I want to be in the room with to really, that's really important. So that's built into the process. And Michelle is also one of those people. We did one of Dominique's plays in Baltimore, Detroit 67 together, as well as a bunch of other ones. But that was family. We were all family in that space.
Hey, it's Fanshen Cox, and you're listening to Sister Brunch. We'll be right back. And during this real quick break, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at Sister Brunch or on Instagram at Sister Brunch Podcast. And you know what? Don't just follow us. Actually, interact with us. Leave us a comment. Let us know how you're doing. Ask us questions. We can't wait to see you on our socials.
This is Kamilah Forbes, and you're listening to Sister Brunch, the podcast all about Black women thriving in entertainment and media.
You've done theater forever and you're crossing over into doing film and TV. And I love that you represent this possibility of making theater more accessible by putting it on our screens as well. What are the differences between working in those two mediums?
Well, obviously there's a real obvious of the live effect, right? Like not having the immediacy of the audience. But the flip side is that an opportunity to be in millions of households, and spark conversations amongst so many different people. I mean, Between the World was a film that was made during the pandemic, and I've yet to still see it, which is kind of sad. I think I should do a screening, but yet to still see it in a theater with people. But the beauty of technology allowed us to tell a story at a critical point in time when literally the world was shut down, when literally theaters were absolutely closed, and and but we had to have this conversation around the worth of Black life in this country, around the honoring of Black life in this country, and we were able to make that happen.
Okay. We could keep you on forever. We're gonna get to this kind of one of our final questions, and I just have to say your commitment, what you talk about in your work at the Apollo, in the work that you're doing, and you personally, the concept that keeps coming up for me is Afrofuturism. Like, this is what us having a future looks like. That just this keeps coming up for me, is like, this is what making sure we know, and the young folks, and that this is what this is Afrofuturism. And I know, and ironically, I think Ta-Nehisi Coates famously is an Afro pessimist, and yet here right, but here is the work you all are doing to say this is how community, arts, making it accessible, so that if you live is incredible, but if you can't see it live, here's a way for you to see it. That's Afrofuturism right here on
It's so
everything
real.
you're describing.
And it's so funny. It's
Woo.
so funny, especially Tasi. He's especially when I think about, it's so interesting, I think, because he sits in such a space of um as a journalist, this idea of
Mhm.
fact, um and and yet um he's also one of those writers who writes comic books, which lives in the complete world of fiction. So I'm so fascinated by how we use our past to render our future. And I think when we think about Afrofuturism, I think there is something to be said about Afrofuturism as a context, and I love that you just manifested it, right? Because we started off saying that, I started off saying that, I feel like I'm my grandmother's wildest dream, but Afrofuturism is not something that arrives out of nowhere, right? It's not something that just arrives out of imagination. It's actually a future that has been plotted and planted, right? But yet we have to make sure that we are imagining ourselves amongst that trajectory, imagining ourselves in the tomorrow. Um, and it's, when I think about T, I think about that lineage, right? Because he's so firmly planted in this world as a historian and as a journalist, while at the same time holding the future.
Well, this is a perfect opportunity to ask our question about how you would speak to your younger self. So, Kamilah, you are sitting down to a sister brunch in your fabulous pink blazer and white shoes, and I know she wearing the same, looking cute. So you're having a sister brunch with young Kamilah, and for fun, what are you both drinking and eating? And then what do you tell her? What do you want to leave her with?
So I'm drinking a clear liquor because I like a tequila or vodka, particularly tequila because you do not get a hangover. I do not add any mixers because I know better.
There you
A good
that's
quality
what I haven't
tequila,
been doing right. Okay, good.
a good quality,
Yes.
right? A good quality,
Yes. Yes.
because we know now
Mhm.
my younger self might still be on a mimosa, or which of mimosas are great, or maybe a real like a mixer heavy, cute little drink. Um, I would say, and what I would say is, don't be so anxious for the next. We're always so anxious. I was always so anxious for the next that I forgot to savor the now. That's what I'd say.
Camilla, thank you so much. We we're so grateful for everything you do and for being here with us. And we got you in any and all ways.
I just want to give you your flowers, Fanshen, and just say it's really an honor. It's really an honor to be here talking with you. And I really hope to continue to build more community with you.
Thank you so much for listening to Sister Brunch, the podcast that brings you the stories of Black women breaking barriers and bringing joy to entertainment and media. This is our 4th season, you all. That means there are 3 previous seasons plus all of the 4th season available on our website. You can read our transcripts. You can see pictures and bios of our guests at sisterbrunch.com. We so appreciate your support by subscribing to the podcast on Apple, following us on Spotify, leaving us great reviews, sharing the podcast with your friends and family. You can also always interact with us on Instagram as Sister Brunch Podcast and support us. That's how you can support us, by rating, reviewing, telling folks about us. We appreciate you so much. Sister Brunch is brought to you by Trujillo Productions. Our senior producer is Sonata Lee Narcis. Our co-producer is Brittany Turner. Our executive producers are Christabel Nsiabwadi and Anya Adams. Our associate producers are Farida Abdul Wahab and Mimi Slater. Our social media videos are cut by Maddie Black. We acknowledge that the land we record our podcast on is the original land of the Tongva and the Chumash people. Thank you so much for listening, you all, and we will catch you on the next one.